The storm outside raged like it carried her broken heart. Clara Hayes sat alone in the darkened living room, her trembling hands clutching the edge of the sofa. She was 7 weeks pregnant, her body fragile, her spirit desperate for love. But instead of comfort, she faced the man who once promised her forever, Adrian Blake, her husband. His face, once her safe haven, now looked like the face of a stranger. That night, Adrian didn't come home with flowers, or with the tenderness of a caring husband. He came back smelling of perfume that wasn't hers, with lipstick stains hidden poorly under his collar. Clara wanted to deny it, wanted to believe she was imagining things. But before she could even ask, he threw the truth into her face like a dagger. "Yes, Clara," Adrian said coldly, loosening his tie with arrogance. "I was with Vanessa. She's the kind of woman I need, polished, ambitious, worthy of my future. And you're just a burden, a weak wife carrying a child we don't even need." Her lips parted, but no words came. The room spun around her. Her baby was supposed to be their hope, their family, their bond. But in his eyes, it was nothing more than an inconvenience. "You're going to the clinic tomorrow," Adrian ordered, his voice like ice. "You will end this pregnancy. I don't want a child tying me down, especially not with you. I'm building an empire, Clara. And there's no room for mistakes." Her heart shattered into a million pieces. She stared at him, searching for the man she had married, the man who once kissed her forehead and whispered promises of eternity. But he was gone. In his place stood a man blinded by greed, power, and lust. Tears streamed down her face as she whispered, "Adrian, this is our baby. How can you ask me to kill our child?" But Adrian only laughed, cruel and sharp. "Because I can. Because you'll do what I say. Don't forget who holds the money, the house, the life you're clinging to. Without me, Clara, you're nothing." The words cut deeper than any blade. She had given up her family for him. Her parents had warned her, begged her not to marry Adrian. And now, pregnant and vulnerable, she had no one to turn to. Her world was collapsing, and the man she trusted most was the one tearing it apart. That night, Clara lay awake, one hand resting gently on her stomach. She whispered to the tiny life growing inside her, "I will protect you. No matter what it costs me, you are my child. You are my everything." The storm outside grew louder, the thunder echoing like a cruel laugh from fate itself. Clara knew that tomorrow would bring unbearable pain, choices she should never have to make. But she also knew one thing. She would never let Adrian destroy her child's life, even if it meant losing everything she had. She wiped her tears, her fragile body shaking with fear and determination. In the depths of her despair, a spark of strength began to grow. She didn't know how yet. She didn't know where she would go or who would stand by her. But she knew this storm wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. Because the night Adrian betrayed her, Clara Hayes made a silent vow that would change their destinies forever. And 3 years later, when she walked back into his world with twins at her side, Adrian Blake would regret every word he ever spoke. Before her marriage became a prison, Clara Hayes had been a girl full of dreams. She wasn't born into wealth, nor was she the kind of woman who sparkled at galas or stood out in glossy magazines. Clara came from a quiet, working-class family in a small suburb outside Chicago. Her father was a mechanic, her mother a schoolteacher. They raised her with kindness and discipline, teaching her to value honesty, humility, and hard work. Clara had always been soft-spoken, the kind of young woman people overlooked in crowded rooms. She loved books more than parties, kindness more than power. Her dream wasn't to marry into luxury, but to build a small, steady life with someone who loved her unconditionally. She worked as an office assistant, balancing long hours at a local firm while saving every penny to one day open a small bookstore of her own. Her parents adored her, but when she introduced Adrian Blake to them, everything changed. Adrian was smooth, handsome, and ambitious. He carried himself with the kind of confidence that could sell lies as truth. Clara's mother warned her, "Men like him don't see women like you, Clara. They see what they can take." But Clara was blinded by what she thought was love. She believed Adrian saw her heart, not her simplicity. She believed she was enough. Against her family's wishes, she married him. On her wedding day, as she walked down the aisle, Clara thought she was stepping into forever. Adrian whispered promises of protecting her, of building a future together. She gave up her parents' blessing, her friends' concerns, and even her bookstore dream. Because she believed in him. But married life revealed cracks almost immediately. Adrian criticized her for not being glamorous enough, for not mingling well at social events, for not helping him climb. He made her feel small in rooms filled with powerful men and glittering women. Still, she told herself it was temporary. If she supported him, if she sacrificed enough, one day he would look at her the way he once did. Then came the pregnancy. For Clara, it was a miracle, a gift she had longed for. For Adrian, it was a burden. He mocked her cravings, scolded her for her morning sickness, and warned her not to gain too much weight. When she smiled and placed his hand on her growing belly, hoping he would feel the heartbeat, he pulled away. The worst part wasn't his cruelty. It was her loneliness. Clara's parents had stopped calling, convinced she had chosen this path over their love. Her friends faded away, unsure how to comfort her when she defended Adrian despite the bruises on her spirit. She was truly alone, her only companion the unborn child she carried. Yet even in her darkest moments, Clara held on to one truth. She had love to give. She may have been fragile, her body easily exhausted, her health always on edge, but her heart was fierce. She whispered nightly to her baby, promising a life filled with love, even if she had to fight the world to give it. And in the silence of those nights, Clara began to sense something she had never dared believe, that her story wasn't over. That maybe, just maybe, she was meant for more than being Adrian Blake's shadow. Her suffering was carving out a new strength inside her, one she hadn't yet recognized. And one day soon, the world that dismissed her would witness it. Because the weak wife everyone pitied was about to rise in a way no one could imagine. Adrian Blake thrived in a world Clara never belonged to. Theirs was a city that glittered under skyscraper lights, a city that never slept, where wealth and power mingled behind crystal chandeliers. Adrian loved it. He craved it. And in that glamorous, suffocating world, Clara was always the outsider. Their penthouse in downtown Chicago wasn't a home, it was a showroom. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the skyline, polished marble floors reflected golden light, and imported Italian furniture sat untouched, more for display than comfort. To Adrian, it was a kingdom. To Clara, it was a cage. Adrian's life revolved around endless galas, charity balls, and high-powered dinners. Every evening was a stage for him to show off his charm and his mistress, Vanessa Moore. Vanessa was everything Adrian wanted the world to see at his side. Sleek, ambitious, dripping in designer gowns. Her laughter echoed through private clubs and luxury hotels, always loud enough for the cameras to catch. Clara had once walked beside Adrian at these events. She remembered standing in those glittering ballrooms, clutching his arm, smiling for photographers while feeling invisible. Women with diamond necklaces would glance at her plain dresses and whisper. Men would greet Adrian with firm handshakes, barely acknowledging her existence. Adrian noticed. Instead of protecting her, he joined the whispers. "Try harder, Clara," he hissed one night after a gala. "You embarrass me. You don't belong in my world." So she stopped going. She stayed home while he escorted Vanessa to galas, their photos splashed across society pages. Clara would see them the next morning on her phone. Adrian's hand on Vanessa's waist, Vanessa's lips painted in cruel red, her eyes triumphant. Each headline was a knife. Power couple on the rise. Adrian Blake and Vanessa Moore steal the spotlight. The truth was suffocating. Clara lived in a palace, yet her nights were silent. Her days filled with chores no servant offered to help with. She folded her own laundry, cooked simple meals Adrian never ate, and whispered to her unborn child while the city below danced in champagne light. Adrian thrived in that glittering world because it fed his ego. Clara suffocated in it because it crushed her spirit. The contrast was brutal. While he wore tailored suits and sipped $100 whiskey, she sat alone in pajamas with swollen ankles, clutching a baby blanket she had sewn herself. Still, Clara found small moments of peace. She would sit by the penthouse window at night, watching the city hum beneath her. She imagined another life, a life where she wasn't invisible, where her voice mattered, where love wasn't something she had to beg for. She didn't know it yet, but those dreams were seeds of the woman she would become. The glamorous world Adrian flaunted wasn't built to last. It was fragile, shallow, built on betrayal. But Clara's world, quiet, tender, full of unshaken love for her unborn twins, was stronger than she realized, because someday soon, the marble floors Adrian worshipped would tremble under Clara's return, and the same city that once ignored her would bow to her power. And on that night, Adrian would discover that the wife he discarded was no longer the outsider. She was the storm walking back into his world. Adrian Blake was a man who wore two faces. To the public, he was charming, sharp, a self-made entrepreneur on the rise. He knew how to shake hands, how to flash a smile that looked genuine, how to convince investors that he was the man to bet on. But behind closed doors, the mask fell away. At home with Clara, he was cruel, calculating, and cold. He was never satisfied. If Clara cooked dinner, he complained it wasn't seasoned enough. If she dressed up for him, he said she looked cheap. If she spoke at a party, he told her to be quiet, to stop embarrassing him. He didn't just want power in business, he wanted control in his marriage. And then came Vanessa Moore. Vanessa was younger, sleek, ambitious, with a hunger for status that matched Adrian's greed. She had started as a public relations assistant in Adrian's company, but it didn't take long for her to move from the office to his penthouse. Adrian called it networking, but everyone knew it was more. Vanessa was everything Clara wasn't, at least in Adrian's eyes. Where Clara was gentle, Vanessa was bold. Where Clara was modest, Vanessa was flamboyant, and Adrian fed on that difference. He flaunted Vanessa in public, laughing too loudly at her jokes, resting his hand on her lower back while cameras flashed. For Clara, the betrayal wasn't just about adultery. It was about humiliation. The world whispered, the newspapers hinted, the socialites smirked. They all knew Adrian had chosen Vanessa over his wife. Clara's shame became her cage. Adrian's cruelty deepened when Clara became pregnant. Instead of celebrating the miracle, he turned colder. He saw her swollen belly as a weakness, a burden that slowed him down. And Vanessa, instead of stepping aside, used it to her advantage. One evening, Clara overheard them in the kitchen. She had just returned from a doctor's appointment, clutching ultrasound photos close to her chest. From the hallway, she heard Vanessa's laugh, sharp as broken glass. Adrian, really? A baby with her? She can't even handle a dinner party, let alone raise your heir. Look at me. I could give you everything you want. Beauty, status, freedom. She's dragging you down. And Adrian's reply was a knife to Clara's heart. You're right. I'll make sure she gets rid of it. I don't need her or that child ruining my future. Clara staggered back, pressing her hand against the wall, fighting the sob that rose in her throat. The man she loved, the father of her baby, had chosen his mistress over his own family. From that moment on, Vanessa became bolder. She would call Adrian at midnight, laughing loudly enough for Clara to hear. She sent flowers to his office, with notes signed only with her initials, daring Clara to say something. And when she visited the penthouse once while Clara was away, she deliberately left her perfume behind. The scent of jasmine haunted Clara's bedroom for weeks. Adrian didn't care. In fact, he wanted Clara to notice. He wanted her to break, to give up, to vanish quietly so he could parade Vanessa without guilt. But Clara didn't vanish. Not yet. She held on to her child, her last piece of hope, even as Adrian and Vanessa tried to crush her spirit. And little did they know, the woman they mocked as weak would one day hold the power to destroy them both. It was supposed to be a quiet evening. Clara had convinced herself that maybe, just maybe, Adrian would soften when he saw the ultrasound photo of their baby. She tucked the black and white image into her purse, her heart beating with fragile hope. She dressed carefully in a pale blue dress that hugged her small bump, brushed her hair until it gleamed, and told herself over and over, "He will remember the man he used to be. He will remember love." But Adrian had other plans. That night, he insisted they attend a charity dinner downtown. Clara hesitated. Her feet were swollen, her nausea was heavy, but Adrian's command left no room for refusal. "You'll come," he said sharply. "Don't make me look like a man who can't control his wife." The venue glittered with chandeliers and gold-trimmed walls. Men in tuxedos and women in sequined gowns floated across the ballroom. Clara felt out of place immediately, her simple dress paling against the parade of couture gowns. She stayed close to Adrian's side, clutching her purse with the ultrasound inside, waiting for a moment to share their news. Then she saw her. Vanessa Moore, shimmering in crimson silk, her lips painted scarlet, her eyes glittering with triumph. And worse, she was standing at Adrian's table, greeting guests as though she were the lady of the evening. Clara froze, her pulse hammering. She wanted to run, but Adrian's hand gripped her arm tightly, steering her forward. "Smile," he hissed. "Don't embarrass me." The introductions began, polite laughter filling the air. Vanessa's gaze slid over Clara like a knife, stopping at her belly. Her lips curled into a cruel smile. "So this is your wife," Vanessa said sweetly, though her voice carried a sharp edge. "How quaint. I didn't realize Adrian still brought you to these events. You must be exhausted, carrying all that extra weight." A ripple of laughter ran through the group. Clara's cheeks burned hot, but she said nothing. She had learned silence was safer. Adrian chuckled, not even bothering to defend her. "She tries," he said, patting Clara's hand as if she were a child. "But you know how it is. Some people just don't shine in this world." The words crushed her. She wanted to scream, to throw the ultrasound photo in his face, to remind him she was carrying his child. But her throat closed. She stood in silence as Vanessa leaned closer, her perfume overwhelming, her voice a whisper meant only for Clara. "You don't belong here. You never did. Adrian will never choose you. Do yourself a favor and disappear." Tears burned behind Clara's eyes, but she blinked them away. She couldn't cry, not here, not in front of them. But the humiliation was complete, the whispers, the laughter, the pitying glances, all carved into her heart. When the dinner ended, Clara excused herself, retreating to the marble restroom. She locked the stall door, pulled out the ultrasound photo, and pressed it to her chest. For the first time, she felt something inside her shift. The humiliation had cut deep, but beneath it, a spark of defiance flickered. She whispered to her baby, her voice trembling, "I will not let them win. You are my reason to fight." And for the first time since Adrian had betrayed her, Clara began to imagine a future where she didn't need him at all. A future where she could walk away, and where one day she would return stronger than either of them ever dreamed. The car ride home was silent, but the silence was not peace. It was suffocation. Adrian stared at his phone, texting Vanessa as though Clara wasn't sitting inches away. Every vibration of his device cut her deeper. She sat with her hands folded over her belly, the ultrasound photo still hidden in her purse, her throat aching from words left unsaid. When they arrived at the penthouse, Adrian didn't even glance at her. He tossed his jacket on the couch, poured himself a glass of scotch, and muttered, "Don't ever embarrass me like that again." Then he disappeared into his office, leaving Clara alone in the vast, cold apartment. The moment the door clicked shut, her composure crumbled. She collapsed onto the sofa, her body trembling, tears spilling faster than she could wipe them away. The humiliation of the evening replayed in her mind. Vanessa's cruel smile, the laughter of strangers, Adrian's betrayal. She had endured so much already, but tonight broke something inside her. She pulled the ultrasound photo from her purse and held it close. "I'm so sorry," she whispered through sobs. "I wanted to show him your heartbeat. I thought maybe he would care." Her shoulders shook as she cried harder, the kind of deep, gut-wrenching sobs that made her body ache. She felt trapped, powerless, invisible. For a moment, despair whispered to her, "Maybe they're right. Maybe you don't belong anywhere. Maybe this fight is too heavy for you." She thought of her parents, of the way they turned their backs after she chose Adrian against their warnings. She thought of the friends who had slowly drifted away, tired of hearing her defend a man who treated her like nothing. She had no one, no family, no allies, just the child in her womb and a heart that kept breaking. The night stretched on endlessly. She wandered through the penthouse, barefoot on the cold marble floors, feeling smaller with every step. In the bathroom mirror she barely recognized herself, her eyes red and swollen, her face pale, her once bright smile erased. She pressed her hands to the sink, whispering, "Who are you now, Clara? What's left of you?" At dawn, exhaustion finally pulled her into bed. But even sleep offered no rest. Her dreams were filled with Adrian's mocking laughter, Vanessa's cruel whispers, and the faces of strangers who saw her as nothing more than a failure. She woke with her pillow wet from tears, her chest heavy with despair. For days, Clara drifted like a ghost. She barely ate, she barely spoke. Her body grew weaker, her pregnancy harder to bear. Adrian didn't notice, or maybe he didn't care. He left early, came home late, always smelling of Vanessa's perfume. The penthouse echoed with silence, the kind that crushed her spirit. Yet even in her darkest collapse, a small flicker of resistance remained. On the third night, she sat again by the window, clutching her belly as the city lights blinked below. She whispered to her child, her voice fragile but steady, "They think I'm nothing, but I will not give up on you. I will not let them destroy us." She wiped her tears, breathing deeply, willing herself to survive one more day. She didn't know how or when, but something inside her refused to surrender completely. And in that fragile spark of defiance, destiny was already shifting, because help was about to come from the most unexpected place. The night Clara's world seemed ready to collapse completely, fate brought someone back into her life. It was a cold, gray afternoon when she found herself sitting in the corner of a downtown cafe, her coat too thin for the weather, her body heavy with pregnancy. She had left the penthouse after another fight with Adrian, wandering aimlessly until her legs gave out. The cafe was warm, but she still felt frozen, lost in a fog of despair. She stirred her tea absently, staring at the steam as tears blurred her vision. Then a familiar voice, low and warm, broke through the noise of clinking cups and chatter. "Clara Hayes?" Her head snapped up. Standing before her was Lucas Grant. He looked older than she remembered, but in the best way, broad-shouldered, sharp-suited, carrying an air of quiet authority. His eyes, however, were the same, kind, steady, impossible to forget. "Lucas," she whispered, stunned. They had known each other years ago, back in college. He had been the boy with big dreams, always encouraging her when she doubted herself. They'd lost touch after she married Adrian. Lucas pulled out the chair across from her without hesitation. "I can't believe it's you. I almost didn't recognize you." His smile faded as he took in her pale face, her swollen belly, the sadness she couldn't hide. "Clara, what happened to you?" For a moment she couldn't speak. The weight of everything, Adrian's betrayal, Vanessa's cruelty, the loneliness, pressed against her throat. Finally she whispered, "I made a mistake, Lucas, and now I don't know how to fix it." Lucas listened without interruption as she poured out her story. The words tumbled out, shaky and raw. She told him about Adrian's affair, about being forced toward abortion, about the humiliation at the gala. She left nothing out, because for the first time in years, someone looked at her with compassion instead of judgment. When she finished, Lucas leaned forward, his voice steady. "Clara, you are not weak. You're stronger than you realize, and you're not alone, not anymore." She shook her head, tears falling again. "I have nothing, Lucas. No family, no friends. Adrian made sure of that. I don't even know how I'll raise this baby." Lucas reached across the table and covered her trembling hands with his. "You have me. Whatever you need, I'll help. Money, safety, a place to start over. I'll make sure you and your baby are protected." Clara's breath caught. No one had said words like that to her in years. Part of her wanted to resist, to insist she could handle it alone. But the exhaustion in her bones, the fear in her heart, whispered the truth. She couldn't survive this fight by herself. Lucas's voice softened. "I always admired you, Clara, even back then. You were brave in ways you didn't even see. Don't let Adrian convince you otherwise. He may think he's in control, but trust me, men like him always fall, and when he does, you'll be the one standing." For the first time in months, a fragile hope stirred in Clara's chest. Maybe she wasn't doomed to live in Adrian's shadow forever. Maybe there was a way out, a way to protect her child and reclaim the life she lost. She looked at Lucas, her eyes wide with fear and possibility. "Do you really think I can survive this?" Lucas held her gaze, his expression unwavering. "Clara, you won't just survive. You'll rise, and when the time comes, Adrian won't even see it coming." And in that moment, Clara didn't know it yet, but she had just found the ally who would change everything. 3 years passed, but for Clara Hayes, they were not wasted years. What began as nights of despair slowly transformed into mornings of resolve. With Lucas Grant by her side, she rebuilt piece by piece what Adrian had tried to destroy. Clara gave birth to healthy twin girls in a quiet clinic overseas. Holding them in her arms, she felt both fragile and invincible. She named them Grace and Hope, because they were her reason to keep living when everything else had fallen apart. Raising them alone was not easy. She battled exhaustion, illness, and the shadows of the past. But every time she heard their laughter, every time she felt their tiny fingers grip hers, she knew she had made the right choice. Lucas kept his promise. He arranged housing, helped with medical bills, and most importantly, encouraged Clara to believe in herself again. He never treated her as a victim, but as a woman with unshaken worth. Slowly, Clara rediscovered her strength. She studied finance, built skills, and learned the world Adrian had once told her she didn't belong in. Then fate gave her an unexpected gift. When her beloved aunt in Europe passed away, Clara discovered she had inherited a massive block of shares in an international corporation, shares that made her a silent but powerful force in the business world. At first, she considered selling them, but Lucas convinced her otherwise. "Hold them, Clara," he said firmly. "Power like this doesn't come often. One day, you'll need it. And when you do, you'll be unstoppable." Clara took his advice, and in those 3 years, the fragile, broken wife faded away. In her place stood a woman transformed, a mother, a strategist, a leader. She still carried scars, but now she also carried fire. By the time Grace and Hope turned 3, Clara was no longer hiding. She attended meetings, learned how to negotiate, and built quiet alliances in industries Adrian could never dream of controlling. Her name remained unknown in his circles, but her influence grew silently, like roots beneath the soil. Then came the night of the gala. The city buzzed with anticipation, the most exclusive charity event of the season, where every powerful name would be present. Adrian Blake, now openly flaunting Vanessa Moore as his partner, was expected to make a grand announcement about his company's new expansion. For him, it was the peak of success. But for Clara, it was the night of her return. She walked into the ballroom wearing a gown of deep emerald silk, her hair cascading in soft waves, her presence commanding but effortless. On her arm was Lucas Grant, tall and confident, his protective gaze never leaving her. The chandeliers glittered above, but all eyes were on her. Whispers rippled through the crowd like wildfire. "Is that Clara Hayes? I thought she was gone. She looks radiant." Even the photographers froze, unsure whether to capture Adrian or the ghost of his past-turned goddess before their eyes. Adrian's glass slipped in his hand when he saw her, his face drained of color. Vanessa, standing proudly beside him moments earlier, stiffened, her smile faltering. For 3 years, Adrian had believed Clara was out of the picture, weak, broken, forgotten. But the woman standing before him was none of those things. She was alive, she was stronger, and she was back. Clara's eyes locked on Adrian's from across the room. She didn't flinch, she didn't smile, she simply stood tall, her daughters waiting quietly in the wings with a trusted nanny, the living proof of the life he had tried to erase. And in that instant, Adrian Blake realized the past he thought he buried had just walked back into his world, more powerful than ever. Adrian Blake had faced hostile boardrooms, cutthroat competitors, and economic downturns that crushed weaker men. But nothing had prepared him for the sight of Clara Hayes walking into his gala. At first he thought he was hallucinating. The woman across the room couldn't possibly be Clara, the timid wife he'd discarded, the one he ordered out of his life. That Clara had been fragile, with downcast eyes and shoulders weighed down by shame. But the Clara before him was different. Her gown shimmered like emerald fire under the chandeliers, her chin lifted high, her gaze unwavering. She moved with grace, every step sending a ripple through the crowd. And worst of all, she wasn't alone. Lucas Grant walked beside her, his presence impossible to ignore. Adrian recognized him instantly. Lucas was a name whispered in the same circles Adrian desperately tried to climb into, a billionaire investor with connections stretching across continents. Adrian's chest tightened as he realized Clara hadn't just survived, she had risen into a world even higher than his own. Vanessa tugged at Adrian's sleeve, her voice low and sharp. "Why is she here? I thought you said she was finished." Adrian didn't answer. He couldn't. His mind raced, torn between shock, rage, and something he didn't dare name: fear. He clenched his jaw and forced a smile as guests began whispering, cameras flashing toward Clara instead of him. For years, he had controlled the narrative. Adrian Blake, successful entrepreneur, with glamorous Vanessa at his side. But tonight, Clara's mere presence shattered that illusion. When the gala's program shifted to mingling, Adrian couldn't stand it anymore. He excused himself from a group of investors and stalked toward Clara. The crowd parted instinctively, sensing the storm about to erupt. "Clara," he said, his voice low but sharp, "what do you think you're doing here?" Clara turned, her eyes meeting his without a flicker of fear. "Enjoying the evening, same as everyone else." Her calmness enraged him. "Don't play games with me. You were supposed to be gone. Out of my life, out of this city." Lucas stepped forward, his tone steady but edged with warning. "Careful, Blake. She has every right to be here." Adrian's eyes narrowed. He hated the way Lucas stood protectively beside her, the way Clara seemed to draw strength from his presence. "So this is it then?" Adrian sneered. "You run off, and now you come back parading around with another man? You think this makes you powerful?" Clara's lips curved, not into a smile but something sharper. "No, Adrian, my power doesn't come from any man. Not you. Not even Lucas. It comes from surviving what you tried to do to me, and I'm still standing." The words hit him like a slap. For a second his mask cracked, and the guests nearby saw it. Adrian Blake, rattled, furious, powerless. He gripped his glass so tightly it nearly shattered. "Don't test me, Clara," he hissed, his voice low enough for only her and Lucas to hear. "You don't know what I'm capable of." Clara leaned closer, her voice calm and cutting. "Oh, I know exactly what you're capable of, and that's why I'm not afraid anymore." For the first time in his life, Adrian felt the ground shift beneath him. The wife he had dismissed as weak was no longer a shadow. She was a storm, and she was standing in his world without flinching. And in that moment, Adrian realized the empire he built could crumble. Not from his enemies in business, but from the woman he once threw away. If Adrian's rage was fire, Vanessa Moore's jealousy was poison. The moment she saw Clara glide into the ballroom, hand resting gently on Lucas Grant's arm, Vanessa felt the walls of her carefully constructed world tremble. For 3 years, she had clawed her way into Adrian's life, securing her place on his arm, in his bed, and in his company. She had worn his last name in whispers, if not legally, and told herself that one day she would be Mrs. Blake. But Clara's return threatened everything. Vanessa had always known Adrian's first wife was weak, pathetic, a shadow to be stepped over. She had mocked her, dismissed her, even laughed about her behind Adrian's back. Yet tonight, the woman who walked into the gala was no shadow. Clara's elegance eclipsed Vanessa completely, and Vanessa felt the sting of every camera lens turning away from her crimson gown to capture Clara's emerald glow. Adrian's reaction only made it worse. Vanessa caught the way his face blanched when he saw Clara, the way his jaw tightened, the way his eyes lingered far too long. It wasn't love, Vanessa told herself. It was fear. But fear had power. And Clara's presence had just stolen Adrian's spotlight. That, Vanessa would not forgive. She waited until Adrian stormed off to confront Clara. Then, with her usual predatory smile, she followed. The crowd buzzed with curiosity, their eyes darting between the three of them, Adrian, Clara, and Lucas. Sensing an opportunity, Vanessa stepped closer, her voice syrupy sweet but sharp enough to cut. "Well, if it isn't the ghost herself," Vanessa said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Clara, darling, I must say, you clean up nicely. Much better than the last time I saw you. Weren't you hiding in a restroom somewhere crying?" Laughter rippled from a few eavesdroppers, but Clara didn't flinch. Her eyes met Vanessa's, calm and unshaken. "Good to see you too, Vanessa. Still rehearsing your lines, I see." The jab landed. Vanessa's smile wavered, but she quickly recovered. "Lines or not, let's be honest. You don't belong here. You never did. This is my world now, Adrian's world. And you're just an embarrassing memory, a discarded wife who couldn't keep her husband's attention." Lucas's jaw tightened, but Clara lifted a hand, signaling him not to interfere. Her voice was steady, almost serene. "Funny, I thought a woman who's truly secure wouldn't need to announce her place so loudly." The crowd gasped. For the first time, Vanessa felt the shift, whispers turning against her, eyes narrowing, people questioning. Rage flared in her chest. She leaned in, her voice low and venomous. "You think you've won something here? You're nothing without Lucas. You left Adrian with nothing, and now you crawl back, hoping to steal the spotlight. Let me remind you. He chose me. He will always choose me." But Clara only tilted her head, her expression unreadable. "Vanessa, sometimes men choose badly, and sometimes their choices destroy them." The words hung in the air, heavy and electric. The crowd's whispers grew louder, reporters' pens scratched across notepads, and cameras clicked furiously. For once, Vanessa was the one left flustered, her confidence slipping like sand through her fingers. Adrian tried to intervene, tugging Vanessa's arm, but it was too late. Clara had already reclaimed the power Vanessa thought she stole years ago. And deep down, Vanessa knew, if Clara had returned, she hadn't come back empty-handed. And that terrified her, because secrets have a way of surfacing, and Clara was carrying one that could ruin them all. The gala continued in a haze of whispers and stolen glances, but Adrian Blake couldn't hear any of it. His mind spun with one thought. Clara. The wife he'd cast aside had returned, not broken and forgotten, but radiant and untouchable. Every investor, every journalist, every rival who saw her tonight would begin to ask questions. And Adrian hated questions he couldn't control. So when Clara slipped away from the ballroom toward the terrace, Adrian followed. He found her leaning against the railing, the city's skyline glowing behind her. The night air caught in her hair, making her look both untouchable and infuriatingly real. Clara, Adrian said, his voice low, urgent. She didn't turn. I was wondering when you'd come storming after me. His jaw clenched. What are you doing here? What game are you playing? Finally, she faced him, her emerald gown shimmering in the moonlight. I'm not playing any game, Adrian. I was invited, just like you. He stepped closer, his temper simmering beneath the surface. Don't give me that. You could have stayed gone. You should have stayed gone. But you walk in with Lucas Grant on your arm, parading yourself like you belong here? What are you trying to prove? Clara's eyes locked onto his, calm and steady. I don't have to prove anything. Not to you. Not anymore. The simplicity of her words rattled him more than a scream ever could. For years, he'd defined her, controlled her, belittled her until she believed it. And now she stood unshaken, looking at him as if he were the one beneath her. You think Lucas makes you powerful? Adrian snapped. You think he can protect you from me? From this world? Clara, you don't know what you've walked into. Vanessa and I, we own this city. People respect us. They fear us. Clara let out a soft, almost pitying laugh. Fear isn't respect, Adrian, and whatever you think you own, it's not nearly as much as you believe. His chest tightened. There was something in her tone, a quiet certainty that unsettled him. He searched her face, trying to find weakness, but all he found was strength. You're still my wife, he said suddenly, the words spilling out before he could stop them. No matter what you tell yourself, you're mine, and you always will be. Clara froze for only a second before answering, her voice cutting like glass. No, Adrian. I stopped being yours the night you chose Vanessa over your own child. I stopped being yours the moment you told me I was nothing. You lost me long before tonight. For a heartbeat, the mask slipped, and Adrian's fear showed. Then anger covered it again. He stepped closer, his face inches from hers. Don't underestimate me, Clara. You think you're safe, but you're not. You come back into my world, and I promise I will make you regret it. Clara didn't move, didn't flinch. She met his threat with silence, her eyes steady as stone. Then she leaned in just slightly and whispered, Be careful what you threaten, Adrian, because sometimes the past has more power than you think. And as Adrian stared at her, unsettled and enraged, he realized Clara wasn't just back to haunt him. She was back with something that could destroy him. The gossip from the gala spread like wildfire across Chicago's social scene. Clara Hayes was back, and she wasn't the same broken woman Adrian Blake had discarded. Her transformation dominated headlines, but whispers alone weren't enough to shake Adrian's empire. He could still dismiss her as a ghost from the past, a woman clinging to Lucas Grant's influence. Clara knew that, which was why her next move had to be deliberate, calculated, unforgettable. The opportunity came 2 weeks later at a charity luncheon hosted by one of Lucas's closest partners. It wasn't as grand as the gala, but it drew the same crowd of society's elite, investors, socialites, journalists hungry for stories. Clara had remained quiet since the gala, letting curiosity swell, and now she would give them something to talk about. She arrived in a soft ivory dress, understated but radiant. The chatter in the room quieted as she entered, cameras already rising, but this time she wasn't alone. Walking beside her, holding her hands with tiny fingers, were 2 little girls. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Their resemblance to Clara was unmistakable, the same eyes, the same gentle smile. But it was their presence, their innocence in such a ruthless world, that silenced even the harshest whispers. Are those her children? Someone whispered loudly. Twins, another replied. But whose? Reporters surged forward, questions flying like arrows. Clara remained composed, guiding Grace and Hope with the poise of a queen. She didn't rush to explain. She didn't need to. Every click of the camera was a dagger pointed at Adrian's carefully built image. From across the room, Adrian and Vanessa froze. Vanessa's face paled, then twisted into fury. Adrian's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He couldn't tear his eyes away from the children. Their delicate features, their undeniable connection to Clara. Impossible, Adrian muttered under his breath. She couldn't have. Vanessa hissed, grabbing his arm. Don't just stand there. Do something. But Adrian couldn't move. The realization hit him like a punch. Clara hadn't been erased. The life he had ordered her to destroy was alive, walking, breathing, and now standing before the very society that judged him. The luncheon descended into chaos as journalists shouted, "Clara, are these your daughters? Who is their father? Why keep them hidden for so long?" Clara lifted her chin, her voice calm yet commanding. "These are my daughters, Grace and Hope. They are my life, my strength, and the reason I stand before you today. I don't owe anyone an explanation for their existence. But I will say this, sometimes what others try to erase becomes the very thing that defines you." The room erupted, half in applause, half in shock. Adrian's face burned under the weight of 100 eyes. His empire, built on the illusion of control, was cracking. Vanessa's nails dug into his arm as she whispered, "They're going to destroy us if you don't stop this." Adrian's fury boiled. He forced a smile for the cameras, but his voice trembled with rage as he whispered, "If those girls are mine, I will take them from her. No one humiliates me like this," and walks away. And as Clara guided her daughters through the flashing lights, Adrian's vow hung heavy in the air, because he had just declared war, and the battleground would be her children. Adrian Blake had always believed control was his birthright. In business, in marriage, in reputation, he dictated the terms. But ever since Clara's return, control had slipped through his fingers like sand. First, her unexpected appearance at the gala, then the twins at the luncheon, turning whispers into headlines. Every newspaper carried the same story, the ex-wife who returned stronger. Adrian raged as he read the articles in his penthouse office, glass after glass of scotch failing to calm him. His investors were asking questions. Rivals were circling, sensing weakness. Vanessa's shrill complaints only added to his torment, but the image of the twins haunted him most. Two little girls who carried Clara's smile, and perhaps his blood. If they were his, then Clara had lied to him. She had defied him. And Adrian Blake did not forgive defiance. He slammed his fist against the desk, startling Vanessa. "I want proof," he barked. "DNA, documents, whatever it takes. If those girls are mine, I'll claim them. She won't humiliate me with some sob-story reunion." Vanessa's eyes flashed with jealousy. "And what if they are yours, Adrian? What then? You'd let her back into your life? You'd let her win?" Adrian glared at her. "This isn't about her winning. It's about me not losing. If they're mine, I'll take custody. Clara can watch from the sidelines while I raise them with the life they deserve. With me." Vanessa's lips curled in disgust. "With us, you mean?" But Adrian didn't answer. In truth, even Vanessa's place was not guaranteed. Adrian loved no one but himself, and loyalty to him was conditional on usefulness. Clara's return had already made Vanessa look weak, and weakness had no place in his empire. That night, Adrian called in favors. Lawyers, private investigators, even a doctor willing to bend the rules. He wanted every detail of Clara's past 3 years, every hospital record, every slip of paper that could be twisted into a weapon. Within days, files landed on his desk. Clara had lived quietly overseas, raising the twins in secrecy, no father's name listed, no family support. Alone? Vulnerable. Adrian smirked as he read, relief flooding him. Vulnerability was his favorite weakness to exploit. He leaned back in his leather chair, whispering to himself, "You should have stayed gone, Clara. Now I'll show you what happens when you cross me." But beneath his bravado, Adrian was unsettled. Clara's confidence, her alliance with Lucas Grant, her mysterious strength, it all hinted at something more. Adrian couldn't shake the suspicion that she wasn't just surviving on Lucas's charity. There was something Clara wasn't telling him. Vanessa noticed his unease. One evening, she cornered him, her eyes sharp. "She has power, Adrian. I don't know how, but she does. You think you're hunting her. But what if she's hunting you? Adrian laughed bitterly. Don't be ridiculous. Clara was weak then, and she's weak now. Lucas won't always be there to shield her, and when I strike, she won't see it coming. Yet even as he said it, doubt gnawed at him. Clara's calmness at the gala, her composure at the luncheon, the way she had faced him without fear, it didn't fit the woman he once controlled. Still, Adrian convinced himself the outcome was inevitable. He would force a DNA test. He would drag Clara to court. He would use every ounce of his wealth and power to rip the twins from her arms. And as he plotted in the shadows, Adrian didn't realize that Clara's hidden strength was already in motion, waiting for the perfect moment to strike back. Vanessa Moore had built her life on performance. Every smile, every laugh, every carefully chosen outfit was a mask designed to prove she was worthy of standing beside Adrian Blake. For 3 years, she had perfected the role of the glamorous partner, the ambitious woman who knew how to play the game. But Clara's return shattered that mask, piece by piece, until jealousy burned too hot to hide. The luncheon had been the tipping point. Watching Clara walk in with her twins, adorable, innocent, and instantly adored by the crowd, Vanessa felt the ground shift beneath her. For the first time, she wasn't the center of attention. The spotlight, which she had fought for with every ounce of charm, belonged to Clara again. That night, Vanessa exploded. As soon as the penthouse door shut, she threw her clutch across the room, its contents scattering like broken glass. Adrian, already on edge, downed a scotch and muttered, "Calm down." "Calm down?" Vanessa's voice rose, sharp and venomous. "She humiliated us. She made you look weak in front of everyone. And those children are ruining everything." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "Watch your tone, Vanessa. If they're mine, then they are my legacy." Vanessa froze, her jealousy spiking into terror. Legacy. The word felt like a knife. "So what, Adrian? You'll just toss me aside for her again? Is that your plan? Run back to your pitiful wife because she managed to fool everyone with a dress and a pair of kids?" Adrian slammed his glass down, shattering it on the marble counter. "Don't push me. You're here because I allow it. Don't forget that." But Vanessa wasn't afraid. Not of Adrian, at least. What she feared was irrelevance. For years, she had convinced herself that stealing Adrian from Clara had been victory. But now she realized, if Clara had risen stronger, then Vanessa was nothing more than a placeholder. So she did what she always did. She struck back. At the next society gathering, Vanessa made her move. She arrived draped in diamonds, her smile dazzling, her arm looped through Adrian's. She laughed louder than usual, whispered comments to nearby reporters, and made sure everyone heard her brag about her role in Adrian's company. But when Clara entered the room, calm and radiant, Vanessa's mask slipped. She couldn't stop herself. "Oh, Clara," Vanessa called across the crowd, her voice dripping with mockery. "It's so brave of you to show your face after disappearing for so long. Tell me, do your daughters know their father? Or is that still a mystery?" The crowd gasped. Reporters scribbled furiously, cameras flashing. Adrian stiffened, realizing Vanessa had gone too far. But it was too late. The venom. Clara's expression didn't falter. She stepped forward, her voice even and strong. "My daughters know everything they need to know. That they are loved, that they are safe, and that they will never be taught cruelty as a form of power." Applause broke out. A ripple of approval spread through the guests, leaving Vanessa exposed, her cruelty laid bare. Her face burned as she realized the tide had turned. Clara had won sympathy, while she had revealed herself as petty and vicious. Adrian pulled Vanessa aside, his grip bruising on her arm. "You just made things worse," he hissed. Vanessa yanked free, her eyes blazing. "Don't you dare blame me. She's destroying us, Adrian. If you don't take her down, I will." And with that, Vanessa Moore crossed a line, one that would not only endanger Clara, but unravel Adrian's empire from the inside. For years, Adrian Blake had carefully crafted his empire brick by brick. He had cultivated investors with handshakes and false promises, dazzled the press with Vanessa's polished smile, and bullied competitors into silence. His company was his kingdom, and he was its untouchable king. But Clara's return cracked the walls of that kingdom, and Vanessa's outbursts smashed them wide open. The morning after Vanessa's public humiliation of Clara, headlines screamed across every major paper. Adrian Blake's mistress targets ex-wife and twins. Society divided. Clara Hayes wins sympathy. Vanessa Moore faces backlash. What Adrian feared most was happening. He was losing control of the narrative. Investors who once ignored whispers about his personal life were suddenly concerned. If he can't manage his own household, one board member murmured, how can he manage millions? Reporters hounded him outside his office, cameras flashing, microphones thrust into his face. Mr. Blake, are Clara Hayes' twins your children? Will you take custody? What role does Vanessa Moore have in your company? Adrian dodged every question with a practiced smile, but behind closed doors, panic brewed. His lawyers warned him that Clara had every right to demand child support if the twins were his. His PR team begged him to silence Vanessa. And worst of all, his top investors scheduled an emergency meeting to discuss confidence in leadership. Vanessa wasn't helping. She stormed around the penthouse, furious at being painted as the villain. This is your fault, Adrian, she snapped. If you had handled Clara properly years ago, she wouldn't even be here. Now I look like a monster, and you look like a fool. Adrian's patience snapped. You are a monster when you open your mouth in public. He shot back. Do you have any idea how much money your little tantrum just cost me? But money wasn't his only problem. Behind the scenes, competitors saw blood in the water. A rival firm leaked documents hinting at financial irregularities in Adrian's company. Journalists were already circling, eager to tie business scandals to his personal disgrace. One evening, Adrian sat alone in his office, the city lights mocking him from beyond the glass. He flipped through the newspapers, his face growing redder with every headline. Clara's photo appeared everywhere. Clara with her twins, Clara walking confidently into events, Clara smiling beside Lucas Grant. The public adored her now, framing her as the wronged woman who had risen from ashes. Meanwhile, Adrian's own name was sinking, dragged down by whispers of cruelty and corruption. He hurled the paper across the room, his voice echoing in the empty space. She's ruining me. Yet deep down, he knew it wasn't just Clara's presence. It was the truth he had tried to bury. Every cruel word, every betrayal, every public humiliation he had inflicted on her was resurfacing. And now the world was holding him accountable. But Adrian Blake wasn't the kind of man to surrender. His empire might be under fire, but he still had weapons left. Lawyers, money, influence. He would use them all. He poured another drink, his hands shaking slightly, and muttered to himself, if Clara thinks she can take this from me, she's dead wrong. I'll crush her before I let her destroy everything I built. What Adrian didn't know was that Clara's greatest weapon had not yet been revealed. And when it surfaced, it would not just bruise his empire. It would annihilate it. Adrian Blake prided himself on knowing everything about his competitors. Information was power, and Adrian collected it like treasure. But what he never realized was that the man standing silently beside Clara Hayes at every event, the man whose presence unnerved him, was already inside his empire. Lucas Grant had not come back into Clara's life by accident. He had been watching Adrian's rise for years, noting the cracks in his foundation. Where others saw a charming entrepreneur, Lucas saw arrogance, debt, and manipulation. Men like Adrian didn't build kingdoms, they built illusions. And Lucas knew illusions always crumbled. The opportunity came at the very boardroom table Adrian believed he controlled. Investors shuffled nervously as rumors about Adrian's scandals grew louder. Clara's name appeared in every headline, her twins drawing sympathy, while Vanessa's outburst painted Adrian as reckless. Shares dipped, confidence wavered. Adrian entered the emergency board meeting ready to demand loyalty. He didn't expect to see Lucas seated at the table. Mr. Grant, Adrian said tightly, forcing a smile. What a surprise. I wasn't aware you had business with us. Lucas adjusted his cufflinks calmly, his tone steady. You should have been aware, Adrian. I've been buying shares quietly for the last 18 months. As of last week, I hold 12% of your company. Gasps filled the room. Adrian's smile faltered, his throat tightening. That's impossible. I would have known. You didn't know, Lucas interrupted smoothly, because you were too busy chasing headlines and mistresses. While you were distracted, I was investing. And unlike you, Adrian, I build businesses with integrity. The board knows it, the market knows it, and soon the world will know it. The room erupted in murmurs. Several board members leaned toward Lucas, nodding eagerly, while others exchanged worried glances at Adrian. For the first time, Adrian wasn't the center of control. He was the man being outmaneuvered in his own kingdom. "You think you can walk in here and steal what's mine?" Adrian snapped, his voice rising. "This is my company, my empire." Lucas's gaze was cool, unshaken. "Your empire is rotting, Blake, and men like you don't deserve to hold power. Clara isn't the only one you underestimated. You underestimated me." Adrian's hands clenched into fists under the table. Rage coursed through him, but beneath it was fear. Lucas wasn't just Clara's ally. He was a predator circling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. And now, the board Adrian once commanded was listening to Lucas with open ears. When the meeting ended, Adrian stormed into the hallway, slamming his fist against the wall. Vanessa followed, her heels clicking furiously. "What just happened in there? Who is he to you?" Adrian's voice was tight with panic. "He's the man trying to destroy me." But Vanessa wasn't convinced. She narrowed her eyes, suspicion growing. "No, Adrian. He's more than that. Did you see the way he looked at Clara? Did you hear the way she trusts him? You're not just losing your company, you're losing control of her. And once she reveals whatever secret she's holding, you'll have nothing left." Adrian turned sharply, his eyes blazing. "Clara doesn't have any power. She's just a woman clinging to someone else's strength." Vanessa smirked bitterly. "Then why does it feel like she's the one holding the cards?" And as Adrian replayed Lucas's calm words in his head, a chilling realization struck him. Clara's return wasn't chance, it was strategy. And the final blow had yet to come. Adrian Blake had never begged in his life. He was the man who commanded, who demanded, who expected the world to bend to his will. But as the walls of his empire began to close in, he found himself doing the unthinkable. Within weeks of Lucas Grant's revelation, Adrian's company slipped further into chaos. Investors pulled back, journalists exposed shady deals, and whispers of bankruptcy filled the air. Once, his name had been synonymous with ambition and success. Now it was tied to scandal, fraud, and a mistress whose venom had poisoned his reputation. And Clara was everywhere. Her calm strength, her twins, her grace at every public appearance, it all made Adrian look smaller. The woman he had called weak was now admired, respected, even envied. The contrast cut him deeper than any business loss. Late one night, unable to sleep, Adrian poured himself another drink. His reflection in the glass window startled him. Tired eyes, unshaven jaw, a man slipping. He hated what he saw. And in that weakness, a desperate idea took root. He would go to Clara. The next day, he waited outside her townhouse. It wasn't extravagant like his penthouse, but it had warmth, something his home had never held. When the door opened, Clara stepped out with grace and hope, their small hands clutching hers. She froze when she saw him. "Adrian," she said coolly, "what are you doing here?" The twins looked up curiously, their innocent eyes widening. Adrian felt an unexpected ache in his chest, but he quickly pushed it down. "I need to talk, alone." Clara's posture stiffened. "Anything you have to say, you can say in front of them. They are my life, Adrian." He swallowed hard, forcing his pride down. "Clara, please, just a few minutes." Reluctantly, she let the girls run inside with their nanny before stepping out onto the porch. Her arms folded across her chest, her gaze steady. "Say what you came to say." For the first time in years, Adrian's voice faltered. "I need your help." Clara blinked, stunned by the words. "My help? After everything you did to me?" His jaw tightened, but desperation spilled out anyway. "The board is against me. The press is destroying me. Lucas is bleeding me dry. But you could save me. If you stand by me publicly, if you say we're reconciling for the children, people will believe it. Investors will come back. I can rebuild." Clara's laugh was sharp, bitter. "You want me to fix the mess you made? You want me to stand beside you like nothing happened? Adrian, you forced me to a clinic and told me to kill my children. You paraded your mistress in front of me. You called me nothing. And now you want me to be your savior?" He reached for her arm, but she pulled back. His voice cracked, raw with fear. "Clara, if I lose everything, I'll have nothing left. Don't let me fall, please." Clara's eyes glistened, not with pity, but with resolve. "You're wrong, Adrian. You won't have nothing. You'll have exactly what you deserve." Adrian's face darkened, his last shred of pride collapsing into anger. "You'll regret this," he hissed. And as Clara closed the door in his face, Adrian realized she wasn't the desperate one anymore. He was. The boardroom was tense, every chair filled with investors whose patience had worn thin. Adrian Blake strode in with his usual swagger, but his confidence was a hollow act. Weeks of bad press and financial instability had left him desperate, and today's emergency meeting would decide his future. He straightened his tie, forcing a smile, and took his seat at the head of the table. "Gentlemen, ladies," he began smoothly, "I know there have been concerns, but let me assure you, Blake Enterprises remains strong. The noise in the press will fade, and with your continued trust, I will steer this company back to stability." The investors exchanged weary glances. Adrian felt the shift, the loss of blind loyalty. He gripped the edge of the table tighter, and then the door opened. Every head turned. Clara Hayes walked in. Her emerald dress seemed to glow under the fluorescent lights, her presence commanding silence. She walked with measured grace to the empty chair at the far end of the table and set down a slim folder. Adrian shot to his feet, fury flashing in his eyes. "What the hell is she doing here?" he barked. "This is a private board meeting." Lucas Grant, seated calmly among the investors, adjusted his cufflinks. "She has every right to be here, Adrian. More right than you, perhaps." The murmurs grew. Clara opened the folder, slid several documents across the polished wood, and spoke clearly. 3 years ago, my late aunt bequeathed me her holdings. That included a 32% stake in this company. I've remained silent until now." The room erupted. Gasps, whispers, shuffling papers. Adrian's face drained of color. "That's impossible," he snapped. You would have told me. I would have known." Clara's eyes met his, steady and unyielding. "You didn't know because you never cared to see me. You dismissed me, humiliated me, tried to erase me. While you paraded your mistress, I became your largest shareholder." The board members leaned forward, studying the documents with hungry eyes. One of them, an older man who had once been Adrian's staunchest ally, cleared his throat. "Mrs. Hayes, pardon me, Miss Hayes, your shares combined with Mr. Grant's make you the majority. Together, you control this company." Adrian's chest tightened, his breath shallow. The empire he had built, the throne he had guarded, was slipping away, not by a rival, but by the wife he had discarded. "You can't do this," he growled, his voice shaking. "This company is mine." Clara's lips curved into a quiet smile. "Not anymore." Her words struck like a gavel. The board members erupted in applause, relief flooding their faces. Investors who once feared instability now saw salvation in Clara's calm strength. Lucas glanced at her with pride, his silent support steady as stone. Adrian slammed his fist on the table, his mask shattering. "You think this makes you powerful? You think you can take everything from me?" Clara leaned forward, her voice low but cutting. "No, Adrian, you took everything from yourself. I'm just here to make sure you can't hurt anyone else." The silence that followed was deafening. Adrian stood trembling, his once mighty presence reduced to nothing. For the first time, he saw Clara not as his victim, but as his conqueror. And as she signed the papers that sealed her control, Adrian realized the truth. His empire hadn't been stolen. It had been reclaimed by the woman he tried to destroy. The news hit the business world like an earthquake. Clara Hayes, once the invisible wife of Adrian Blake, was now the majority shareholder of Blake Enterprises. Overnight, the company shifted from Adrian's kingdom to Clara's empire. The press hailed her as the woman who rose from ashes, while Adrian became the symbol of arrogance undone. In his penthouse, Adrian raged like a caged animal. He threw glasses against walls, shredded newspapers, shouted until his voice cracked. Vanessa watched from the corner, her lips pressed into a thin line. She had stood beside Adrian for years, weathering the whispers, enjoying the luxuries his power brought. But luxuries were worthless without security. And now, Adrian had none. "You'll fix this," Vanessa said sharply. "You'll fight her in court. You'll find a loophole." Adrian's laugh was hollow, broken. "Don't you get it? She owns me. She owns the company. There's no court strong enough to undo that." Vanessa's eyes narrowed. For the first time, she saw Adrian not as the man who could give her everything, but as the man who was about to lose it all. And Vanessa Moore had never been loyal to losers. Days later, the betrayal came. Adrian walked into another board meeting, hoping to claw back some authority, only to find Vanessa seated at the opposite end of the table, next to a rival investor. She wore a sleek black dress, her smile sharp as glass. "Vanessa," Adrian spat, fury in his voice. "What the hell are you doing?" She crossed her legs slowly, savoring the moment. "Surviving, something you clearly forgot how to do." Gasps echoed through the room as she laid out documents, evidence of Adrian's hidden debts, shady deals, and embezzlement schemes she had quietly collected over the years. Every sin he thought buried was suddenly on display. "You betrayed me," Adrian whispered, his face pale. Vanessa's smile was cruel. "No, Adrian, you betrayed yourself the moment you underestimated Clara. I just made sure the world saw the truth." The board didn't need convincing. Within minutes, Adrian was stripped of his title, his power, his seat at the table. The company he once ruled now belonged entirely to Clara and her allies. Outside, the press swarmed. Reporters shouted, cameras flashed, microphones shoved into his face. "Mr. Blake, how do you respond to being ousted? Do you regret how you treated Clara Hayes? Is Vanessa Moore testifying against you?" Adrian shoved past them, his once impeccable suit rumpled, his face twisted in rage and humiliation. For years he had strutted before these cameras, flaunting his power. Now he was nothing more than a fallen king, every headline a dagger in his pride. Back in the penthouse, stripped of authority, Adrian confronted Vanessa one last time. "After everything I gave you," he snarled, "you betray me for scraps?" Vanessa leaned against the doorframe, her eyes cold. "You didn't give me anything. I took it. And now I'm done with you. Enjoy your fall, Adrian. You earned it." Her heels clicked against the marble as she walked out, leaving him alone in the ruins of his empire. Adrian collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. For the first time, the man who thought himself untouchable was utterly alone. No company, no allies, no mistress, nothing. And as he stared into the silence, he realized the cruelest truth. His downfall hadn't been caused by enemies. It had been delivered by the two women he thought he controlled. The night Adrian Blake fell, the city felt different. His name, once plastered across magazines and financial columns, was now spoken only with scorn. His empire had collapsed, his mistress had betrayed him, and his so-called allies had abandoned him without hesitation. For Adrian, there was no redemption, only silence and ruin. But for Clara Hayes, it was the beginning of something new. Clara stood in her office, at the top of Blake Enterprises, now rebranded under her leadership. The city lights stretched endlessly below, a view she had once seen only from behind Adrian's shadow. Tonight, she stood in front of the glass, shoulders squared, her daughters playing quietly in the corner. Grace and Hope giggled as they built castles out of wooden blocks, their laughter filling the space with warmth Adrian's reign had never known. Lucas entered, carrying 2 mugs of tea. He set one on her desk, his eyes soft with pride. "You did it," he said quietly. Clara shook her head gently. "We did it. You stood by me when no one else would." Lucas smiled, but his gaze lingered on her. "I didn't make you who you are, Clara. That strength was always inside you. Adrian just blinded you to it. All I did was remind you." Her heart swelled, not just with gratitude but with peace. For the first time in years, she felt whole. She had survived betrayal, humiliation, and despair. And now, she was not just surviving, she was leading. The press clamored outside the building, desperate for a statement. Clara had avoided interviews since her takeover, but tonight she decided it was time. She walked into the packed conference room, Lucas by her side, her daughters safely with their nanny. Flashes exploded as reporters shouted questions. "Miss Hayes, how does it feel to take over the company that once belonged to your ex-husband? Do you see yourself as a symbol for women who've been wronged? What message do you want to send to those watching your story?" Clara raised her hand and the room fell silent. She spoke calmly, but every word carried the weight of her journey. 3 years ago, I was told I was nothing. I was humiliated, abandoned, and forced to choose between obedience and survival. But I chose my children. I chose to fight, even when I had nothing but faith. And tonight, I stand here not for revenge, but to remind everyone listening, strength doesn't always look loud. Sometimes it looks quiet. It looks patient. It looks like a woman who refuses to give up, no matter how broken she feels. Applause thundered through the room, echoing long after she finished. Cameras flashed, pens scribbled, but Clara didn't crave their approval. Her victory wasn't in the headlines. It was in the lives she had rebuilt. Her own and her daughters'. Later that night, she returned home, tucking Grace and Hope into bed. She kissed their foreheads softly. "You are my greatest triumph," she whispered, "and everything I do for you." In the quiet that followed, Clara sat by the window, Lucas beside her. The city glittered with endless possibility. She wasn't the timid wife anymore, nor the broken woman crying in the dark. She was Clara Hayes, the woman who rose, who reclaimed, who triumphed. And as her daughters slept peacefully, Clara knew one truth that would never change. Women are never truly powerless. Sometimes they just need the right moment to show the world exactly who they are. So that's how Clara's journey finally came to an end. My friends, you're still here with me, right? If you've stayed until now, it means something in this story touched your heart in a way words alone can't explain. Maybe it reminded you of your own struggles, or maybe it lit a spark of hope you didn't know you needed. Life can be cruel, unfair, and humiliating at times. People may betray us, abandon us, or try to convince us we're nothing. But as Marcus Aurelius once said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That's exactly what Clara did. She stopped letting others define her worth, and she rose stronger than ever. And that's the lesson for us. No matter how broken you feel, there is always a way to stand again. Not for revenge, not to prove anyone wrong, but for yourself, for those you love, for the life you deserve. If this story touched you, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Because together, we'll keep telling stories that heal, inspire, and remind us we are never powerless.